A storm trembled across the void. Stars blinked behind thunderclouds that had no business in space, and in the silence between galaxies, a cry echoed, a sound no mortal could hear, but every god did. The king of Asgard, Odin the Allfather, had fallen. His golden light, once stretched across realms, dimmed into a single pulse before vanishing. On Earth, far from the divine chaos unfolding across the cosmos, Bruce Wayne stood alone atop a black skyscraper in Gotham. His cape moved like a dying flame in the wind. The bat signal burned against the night sky. But this time, he hadn't lit it. Trouble. He whispered to no one, his eyes locked on the impossible. A crack in the sky, glowing green, warping the stars above. It wasn't magic. It wasn't science. It was something older than both. It called to him. Back in the throne room of the Galactic Council, a chamber vast as a galaxy, carved from meteor bone and stardust, cosmic rulers gathered around Odin's final will, displayed as a holographic relic. It glowed faintly, pulsing with runes and grief. Absurd, barked the alpha mind of Centaur, a mortal detective, inheriting Asgardian legacy. Laughter followed, cruel and echoing, like knives against stone. The name written in the Allfather's last decree, etched in the language of stars, was not Thor, not Loki, not any blood of Asgard. It was Bruce Wayne. And beside that name, a second decree. Let HELA, my daughter of death, be his bride. Silence cracked the room. Then outrage flooded it. She is cursed, hissed a hooded being from the celestial veil. She is war, dressed in sorrow. She is a monster, spat another. But none denied the will, for no one defied Odin's last command. Far beneath the stars, Bruce studied the ripple in the sky as it widened into a portal. He didn't flinch. He'd seen monsters before, looked into eyes darker than the void. But he'd never felt this pull. This wasn't a mission. This was fate. The sky opened. She stepped through. HELA. Black horns arched from her crown of living shadow. Her eyes were not green. They were the color of morning. Her armor moved like wind over blades. She did not walk. She glided. And the ground beneath her darkened as if fearing her touch. Bruce didn't reach for a weapon. He only watched. "You are not what I expected," she said, her voice smooth as smoke, laced with centuries of rage. "And you're not what they told me," Bruce replied, unmoving. "You're not ugly." She laughed, a sound sharp and aching. "Then you haven't seen the part that matters." A beat passed, then another. The silence between them burned more fiercely than fire. "I didn't ask for this," he said quietly. "Nor did I," she answered, softer now. "But we are bound by a god's dying breath." She looked up. The stars turned in her eyes. "I came to end a curse," she added. "But I don't know if I am one." Bruce stepped closer, barely a foot between them now. "Then let's find out," he said. And in the distance, the Galactic Council watched, judged, mocked. But in that quiet place between shadow and flame, destiny had already taken root. Two broken legends, one dying will. A love not chosen, but chained by the stars. And the universe would never be the same. Gotham's skyline seemed to crack under the weight of the storm that raged across it. The night air was thick with tension, heavy, suffocating, like the city itself was holding its breath. On the edge of Wayne Tower, Bruce Wayne stared at the glowing crack in the sky. He wasn't a man who usually believed in fate, but as he watched the silhouette of HELA step into his world, he couldn't help but feel the sting of inevitability. Her presence wasn't just ominous, it was ancient, a shadow that darkened every corner of his mind. Her beauty, wild and dangerous, defied the typical laws of attraction. There was nothing soft about her, nothing warm. She radiated cold power, a deadly calm that seemed to freeze the air itself. HELA's voice cut through the storm, her tone as crisp as the edge of a blade. "You're still staring at the stars," she said, eyes narrowing slightly. as though she could read his every thought. Bruce didn't flinch. His mind, though, raced. "I'm trying to figure out what you want." Her laugh was soft, almost sad. "I want what's been promised to me, what Odin's foolish will has thrust upon both of us." She paused, watching the way his eyes hardened. "I'm not here to make peace, Bruce Wayne. I'm here because the gods have sentenced me." His jaw tightened. He knew what she meant. He was her sentence. But he also felt something darker shifting in the pit of his stomach. Something that made him wonder if, in some twisted way, he might have inherited more than just Asgardian chaos. Her shadowed eyes bored into him as she continued, her voice now low and intimate. "You think you can fix this, that you can save us. But the curse is already in motion, Bruce. You can't change what's written in the stars." Bruce shook his head, trying to suppress the gnawing sense of helplessness. "I don't believe in fate." "Then you're a fool," she said, her voice cold again, but with an edge of something more, amusement. "Fate isn't a concept for heroes. It's a punishment." For a moment, neither of them moved. The city below them seemed far away, distant, as though they were suspended in time itself. Bruce took a breath, studying her, the way she stood with effortless authority, as though the world had been made to bend beneath her will. And yet, beneath all the darkness, there was something broken in her, something that mirrored the emptiness he fought so desperately to conceal in himself. He took a step closer, the sound of his boots on the rooftop almost deafening in the stillness. His eyes locked with hers, searching for that piece of her he could not quite grasp. "You're not what I expected either," he said quietly. For the first time, something flickered in her gaze, a spark, faint but real. She didn't smile, but the edges of her lips softened, just for an instant. "What did you expect, Bruce Wayne?" He stared at her, unable to fully answer. What was he expecting? A monster? A weapon? He didn't know. But he had never expected someone like her, someone with eyes that held the weight of entire worlds. He had never expected a woman who could make him feel both helpless and powerful at once. A crack of thunder shook the sky, bringing them both back to the present. The city roared beneath them, as if it sensed the tension between them. "I don't know what happens next," Bruce said, his voice low, "but I'm not running from this." HELA's eyes glimmered, a dangerous, unreadable emotion swimming within them. "Neither am I." And in that moment, something irreversible shifted between them. The stars, once indifferent, seemed to shine a little brighter, and a little darker, around them. Two enemies, bound together by an ancient will, standing on the brink of destruction. The universe held its breath. They did too. The city of Gotham felt small beneath the weight of what was unfolding. In the chaos of endless streets, the flickering lights of alleyways, and the endless hum of traffic, there was a quiet, a dark, unsettling silence that Bruce had never known. The storm had passed, but the air still trembled. There was no turning back now. Not for him, not for her. Bruce stood before the Batcave's entrance, his cape pooling around him, the shadows beneath his cowl deeper than ever. Inside, the machinery hummed with life. His world of control, precision, and vigilance was all he had left. But that was the problem, wasn't it? He was a man of order, a man who knew how to bend the darkness of Gotham to his will. But HELA was chaos incarnate. And yet, the closer he came to her, the less he could deny the force drawing him in. He turned sharply, his fist slamming into the concrete wall, shattering his frustration into silence. His mind raced back to the rooftop. Her eyes, those cursed eyes that spoke of death, but felt like they held so much more. He shook his head, pushing the thoughts away. He had a mission. He had always had a mission. But then, like a whisper in the corner of his mind, he heard her voice again, soft and biting. "You can't control everything, Bruce." The echo lingered as he stepped into the cave, his heart pounding against his ribs. He needed answers. The message Odin had sent through the stars. An inheritance, a curse, Whatever it was, had to be dealt with. But HELA, she wasn't a part of his plan. She was something else entirely. Bruce's gaze fell on the massive bat-shaped symbol that illuminated the center of the cave. He could still hear Alfred's voice in the back of his mind, urging him to reconsider his own path. Master Wayne, sometimes even the darkest of nights can be lit by the brightest of stars. But those stars weren't guiding him now. They were mocking him. And she was the one at the center of it all. The cave doors opened with a hiss. He looked up. HELA. She was standing in the shadows, a figure of absolute power. Yet she didn't move. Not immediately. Instead, she observed him, her eyes heavy with unspoken words. He took a step toward her, not knowing what to expect. You should leave. I don't need you here. Her lips curled in the faintest smile, the kind of smile that felt like a threat. You need me more than you realize. I don't need anyone, Bruce said, his voice colder than the steel around him. Not anymore. Her smile faded. Is that why you still wear the mask? To hide from what you fear, what you can't control? Bruce didn't flinch. I wear it because it's necessary. You can lie to the world, she said, her voice soft, but you can't lie to yourself. For a long moment, they stood there, the cavernous space between them echoing with 1,000 thoughts unsaid. Bruce could feel the weight of her gaze, as if she could see right through his armor, to the heart of the man beneath. It was uncomfortable, vulnerable. I'm not afraid of you, he muttered, trying to convince himself more than her. HELA took a slow, deliberate step forward. You should be. There was something terrifyingly beautiful about the way she moved. Every step, like the shadow of a fallen star, graceful yet ominous. Her presence seeped into the cave, twisting the air with the scent of burning ice, the promise of destruction. Bruce's pulse quickened. He knew the risks, knew how dangerous this all was. Yet, despite everything in him that screamed to pull away, he didn't. Her hand reached out, gently brushing against the edge of his jaw. The touch was cold, otherworldly. Yet there was no malice in it, only the weight of destiny, the touch of a woman who knew what it was to have everything taken from her. His breath hitched. His mind screamed for him to break away, to push her out of his world. But as their eyes locked, a shift occurred. It wasn't a choice anymore. They were bound. The fate that had brought them together could never be undone. And deep in the shadows of the Batcave, the universe watched, waiting to see what would rise from the ashes of what they would become. The city breathed beneath them, unaware of the reckoning that had begun. Gotham was a city built on shadows, yet even here, even in the heart of its darkest corners, Bruce felt something stir within him. Not the fear he had spent years fighting, not the rage that had always threatened to consume him, but something else entirely. Attraction. It was an alien feeling, something Bruce had never allowed himself to entertain. He wasn't supposed to feel drawn to HELA. He wasn't supposed to even acknowledge it. She was chaos. She was a force of destruction that threatened everything he had fought to protect. And yet, she was also something else. Something deeper. Something that made the cold walls of his heart crack just enough for her to slip through. Bruce stood at the edge of the Batcave, his fists clenched, his back to her. His cape swayed in the wind, but he could feel her presence like a shadow on his skin. You can't keep fighting this. HELA's voice cut through the stillness. Bruce didn't turn. I've been fighting all my life. I'm not going to stop now. You fight because you don't know what else to do, she said, stepping closer, her boots barely making a sound on the cold stone floor. Her voice was quieter now, more intimate. You think you're saving Gotham, but you're only saving yourself. You wear the mask to hide the part of you that craves power, control. You think you're better than the darkness you fight, but you're one with it. Her words hit harder than any blow he'd ever taken. They were true. Every word. I'm not like you, he said, his voice cold, though he felt the heat of her words sear into him. No, she agreed softly. You're not. You hide your darkness. I embrace mine. She was standing beside him now, too close. Bruce could feel the coldness of her presence, the weight of her ancient power. But he didn't pull away. Couldn't. The room between them crackled with tension, raw, electric. It was the kind of tension that could break a man. Her eyes met his, and for the first time, Bruce saw something else in them. Not just the cold, unfeeling depth of a goddess, but the depth of loneliness. He could see it there, hidden behind the mask of ice she wore. The emptiness of a being who had lived for centuries, cast aside by her own family, bound by the cruel will of a god who had abandoned her. "You think you understand loss," she said, her voice barely a whisper now. "You think you know what it's like to lose everything. But I've seen the end of worlds, Bruce. I've watched them burn. And when they do, there's nothing left." His throat tightened. Her words were too real. He couldn't deny them. "I never wanted this," she continued, her voice softening, the hardness in her tone replaced with something far more dangerous. Vulnerability. "I never asked to inherit a throne of death. But I will. And I will rule it, no matter the cost." She stepped back, her gaze never leaving him. "But you fight because you can't let go. You're terrified of what would happen if you did. You think that by holding on, you can change the world. But I know the truth. The world will always change, Bruce. And so will you." Bruce's chest ached, the words slicing through him like knives. He didn't want to hear this. Didn't want to acknowledge the truth that was staring him in the face. But he couldn't stop himself. "You're wrong," he said, his voice steady. "I can make a difference. I've made a difference." "Have you?" she asked, her eyes darkening. "Or have you just been playing the hero in a story that's already been written? You're not the first to wear the mask of Gotham, Bruce. You won't be the last." Bruce took a step forward, his pulse racing. "I don't need your judgment. I know who I am." "I wonder if you do," she replied. Her words hung in the air, sharp and suffocating. And for a long, painful moment, they stood in silence. Two broken souls, bound by a destiny neither could escape. The storm outside had returned, howling against the cave's walls. But within, the real storm was just beginning. A war of hearts and minds that neither of them could win. The world was changing. And so were they. The city of Gotham had always been a place of shadows, a landscape defined by the fight between light and darkness. But tonight, as Bruce Wayne stood at the precipice of his greatest challenge, even the dark streets below seemed to tremble with uncertainty. HELA stood in the heart of the Batcave, the very air around her heavy with ancient power. Her gaze was unwavering, a mirror to the depths of the universe itself. Bruce couldn't shake the feeling that every word she spoke carried the weight of countless lifetimes. "You still don't get it, do you?" HELA's voice was low, almost tender, as if she were trying to break through the walls Bruce had spent years building. "You think you're the only one who's lost, the only one who's been through the fire, but you don't know the true meaning of sacrifice." Bruce's jaw tightened, his chest burned with the familiar ache of old wounds reopening, but he refused to let her see the cracks forming beneath the surface. "I know loss better than anyone," he said, the words scraping out of him like shards of glass. "I've buried too many people, watched too many friends fall." "And yet," she replied, her voice colder now, cutting through his defenses, "you still stand. You still fight. Not for them. Not for Gotham. But for yourself." He recoiled, the truth of her words landing harder than any physical blow. "I fight because I have to," Bruce said, his voice hardening. "Because someone has to protect this city." "And what do you protect it from?" HELA's eyes gleamed with a dark, knowing light. "The criminals. The corruption. Or is it from yourself?" Bruce took a step back, his chest tightening. She was right. He had always fought for others, but deep down, he had been fighting against his own demons. The rage, the guilt, the fear of becoming the very thing he swore to destroy. "You think you're saving Gotham," HELA continued, stepping closer, her voice now a whisper of temptation. "But all you're doing is feeding the cycle. The more you fight, the more the darkness grows. And when you stand at the end of it all, there will be nothing left but ruin, nothing left but ashes. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Bruce could feel them gnawing at him, twisting something deep inside him. Was she right? Was he doomed to fail? Was Gotham already beyond saving? For a moment, there was nothing but silence between them, the weight of their shared pasts pressing in on the cave. Bruce closed his eyes, trying to push the doubt away, but it lingered like a shadow. "You think you have the answers," he said, his voice quiet but steady. "But you don't. I've been to the edge of darkness before. I stared into the abyss, and I didn't let it swallow me. I won't let it swallow Gotham, either." HELA's expression softened for just a moment. It was a flicker, brief but real, before the cold mask of the goddess returned. "You fight so hard," she said softly, "but you don't understand. The abyss isn't something you can fight. It's something you have to accept." Bruce's pulse raced, his heart pounding in his ears. "I will never accept it. Then you will never be free." The words hit like a hammer. Bruce flinched, but he didn't look away. He couldn't, because deep down he knew she was right. He had been running for so long, from the pain, from the darkness inside him, from the part of him that wanted to tear everything down. HELA stepped forward, her presence towering over him, and for the briefest moment, Bruce allowed himself to feel the weight of her gaze. Her eyes, cold but strangely familiar, held something he couldn't fully understand. "You're not alone in this," she said quietly. "We're more alike than you want to admit." The words struck harder than anything she had said before, and Bruce felt them pierce through the armor he had spent so long constructing. He wanted to deny them, wanted to fight them off, but a part of him, the part he had buried for so long, knew she was right. The storm outside had returned, but it was nothing compared to the storm inside. Two broken souls, bound by fate, standing on the edge of everything they had ever known. And Bruce knew, in that moment, that this was only the beginning. The Batcave was silent, the air thick with tension. The shadows seemed to pulse around them, alive with the weight of unspoken truths. Bruce stood at the center of it all, his fists clenched, every fiber of his being on high alert. His world had always been built on control, on the rigid certainty that he could bend the chaos of Gotham to his will. But standing before HELA, that certainty was slipping away, like sand through his fingers. She was a force of nature, untamed, unyielding. And for the first time, Bruce felt like he was the one caught in the storm. "I'm not like you," he muttered, more to himself than to her. The words tasted bitter on his tongue, but they were all he had left to hold on to. HELA's gaze never wavered. "You say that, Bruce, but deep down, you know the truth. You wear the mask because you're terrified of the man beneath it. You hide in shadows because the light reveals everything you fear." He clenched his jaw, the burn of her words like a brand searing into his soul. He didn't want to admit it, not to her, not to himself. But the doubt she had planted was growing. And worse, it was starting to make sense. "You don't understand," he said, voice raw. "I can't let go of the mask. I have to protect Gotham." "You think that's your purpose?" HELA's voice was soft, almost sad, as if she were speaking to a child. "You think you're saving anyone?" Bruce's hands curled into fists at his sides. "Yes." The word was firm, desperate. "I am saving them. Gotham needs me." HELA took a step closer, her eyes searching his face like she was peeling back the layers of his mind, piece by piece. "No, Gotham doesn't need a savior. It needs someone who understands what it means to rule, not with fear, but with acceptance." Her words were like poison, seeping into his veins. The idea of ruling, of accepting the darkness he'd spent his entire life fighting, was unthinkable. He had never been a man of power, not like her. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and now it was beginning to grow, spreading like wildfire inside him. "I won't be you," Bruce growled, the words like a vow. I won't let the darkness swallow me. HELA smiled, but it wasn't a smile of victory. It was something deeper, more knowing. The darkness is already inside you, Bruce. It's in every choice you make, every life you've taken. The moment you chose to wear the mask, you became something else. You became a king of shadows. And you've been ruling over Gotham ever since. Bruce felt the sting of her words, of truth he couldn't deny. He had never been a hero. Not really. He was a man who used fear, a man who ruled with the threat of violence. Gotham had never needed a hero. It had needed someone who understood the power of control, the weight of a crown. I'm not a king, Bruce whispered, the weight of those words crashing down on him. HELA's gaze softened, as if she were seeing him for the first time. Then you're a fool. The words stung more than any physical blow could. Bruce could feel his resolve cracking, his foundations crumbling beneath him. He had spent his entire life fighting the darkness, refusing to acknowledge that he was part of it. But now, with her standing before him, that illusion was fading. He couldn't run from it anymore. You could be so much more, HELA whispered, her voice soft, coaxing. You don't have to keep fighting the inevitable. You don't have to fight me. He looked into her eyes, and for the first time, he saw something that terrified him. Understanding. She wasn't just an enemy. She was a mirror, reflecting everything he had tried so hard to bury. I won't join you, Bruce said, his voice trembling, not with fear, but with something else, something deeper. HELA took a slow, deliberate step forward, her presence like a storm. No, you won't join me, but we will become something together, something neither of us can escape. Bruce wanted to push her away, wanted to run. But as she reached out, her cold fingers brushing against his chest, he knew the truth. It wasn't just Gotham that was in danger. It was him. The fire had already been lit, and now there was no turning back. The night had deepened, its silence punctuated only by the soft hum of the Batcave's machines. Outside, the storm raged on, thunder cracking across the skies like the roar of gods. Inside, Bruce stood motionless, his chest rising and falling with the weight of a decision he couldn't seem to escape. HELA's presence surrounded him like a dark cloud, a constant reminder of the choice he was being forced to make. He had spent his life fighting to keep control over his emotions, over Gotham, over the endless darkness within him. But now, standing in the shadow of HELA, he realized that he might have been fighting the wrong battle all along. You don't understand, Bruce muttered, his voice tight. I'm not like you. I don't want to rule. HELA's eyes darkened, the corners of her lips curling into a smile that held no warmth. You don't have to want it, Bruce. Power doesn't wait for permission. It simply takes. He could feel the pull of her words, a gravity that was too strong to resist. But he wouldn't succumb to it. Not yet. I won't let you turn me into what you are, Bruce spat, his eyes burning with defiance. I'm not a god, and I'll never be one. I'm human. I choose to be human. HELA stepped closer, her presence so overwhelming it seemed to fill the entire cave. And what has your humanity gotten you, Bruce? A city that doesn't appreciate you. A life filled with loneliness, pain, and endless conflict. Tell me, how has that worked out for you? His heart clenched at the truth she spoke, but he refused to let it show. I fight because I have to. Because someone has to stand between Gotham and the darkness you would bring. Her gaze softened, her voice low and almost tender. And what if that darkness is part of you? What if it's the one thing you can't outrun? Bruce's throat tightened. He could feel the weight of her words, the suffocating knowledge that there was something about him, something in his soul, that had always been just as dark as the world he fought against. I'm not afraid of it, he said, but even as he spoke, the conviction in his voice wavered. HELA reached out, her cold fingers brushing his jaw, sending a chill through his skin. You should be, she whispered. The touch was electric, her proximity unsettling in a way Bruce couldn't quite understand. There was no malice in it, only a strange kind of understanding. A shared pain that seemed to pull them closer. His breath hitched, and for a moment, the world around him seemed to blur. HELA's eyes locked onto his, and for the first time, Bruce saw something there that wasn't cold or calculating. Something softer, something almost human. "I never asked for this, Bruce," she said, her voice barely audible, as if the confession was too much for even her to bear. "But the universe has its way of deciding, and we, all of us, are just pawns in a game far older than us." The words hung heavy between them, and Bruce's resolve cracked further. He had spent so long fighting, pushing everyone away, never allowing anyone to truly see him. But now, with her standing before him, he could feel the truth of what she was saying. They were both trapped. They were both pieces on the same chessboard. "I'm not your pawn," Bruce said, his voice sharp, though it trembled with something else, something raw, vulnerable. "I never will be." "You already are," HELA replied, her voice a mixture of sadness and inevitability. "You've been playing the game for so long, Bruce, you don't even realize you are losing." He clenched his fists, frustration rising within him like a storm. "I'm not losing," he growled. "I refuse to lose." "Then fight," she said simply, her eyes never leaving his. "Fight for what you believe in, Bruce. But understand this. The harder you fight, the more you'll lose. Because in the end, it's not the city that will break you. It's your own heart." The words struck him like a blow to the chest. For a moment, he thought he might fall to his knees. But he didn't. Instead, Bruce met her gaze, his voice low and steady. "Then let it break." HELA's smile returned, but it was different now. Darker, knowing. She had already won. Whether he wanted to admit it or not, he had already taken the first step into the abyss. And once you looked into the dark, there was no going back. The Batcave was no longer a place of refuge. It felt like a prison, silent, cold, and full of ghosts. The walls seemed to close in on Bruce, the weight of his choices pressing down on him with the force of a collapsing star. He had stood at the edge before, had seen the abyss waiting for him, but never like this. Never with HELA standing beside him, her dark presence like a shadow that stretched across his very soul. It had all come to this moment. The city of Gotham, his city, was at the brink of destruction, and Bruce had no idea how to stop it. HELA had shown him the truth, the raw, unfiltered truth that he had spent his life denying. Gotham, the darkness, the mask, it had all been part of him all along. "You can't keep fighting forever, Bruce." HELA's voice cut through the silence, almost a whisper. Her words slid through his defenses, like an unstoppable tide. "There comes a time when the fight is over, when you must finally accept what you are." Bruce turned, his eyes burning with defiance. "I will never accept that." Her gaze softened, and for a fleeting second, he saw a flicker of something in her eyes, something human. It was brief, almost imperceptible, but it was enough to make him wonder. Was she trying to break him? Or was she trying to show him the path he had been too afraid to take? "You're already broken, Bruce," she said, her voice carrying a sadness that cut through him. "But you don't have to stay that way. You could have everything. Power, control, the world at your feet. I can give you that." He shook his head, his pulse pounding in his ears. "I don't want it. I don't want your power. I've seen what it does to people. To you." Her lips curled into a bitter smile, but there was no malice in it, only a deep, ancient weariness. "You don't understand. Power doesn't take away. It gives. It defines." Bruce stepped forward, his fists clenched at his sides. "I don't need to be defined by anyone but myself." HELA's eyes flashed with something dangerous, but it was quickly replaced by that strange, knowing calm. She took a step closer to him, her voice softening. "Then what will you do, Bruce? How will you stop me?" The question hung in the air, the weight of it pressing down on him. He had always been the one who fought, who stood against impossible odds. But now, with the city crumbling around him and HELA's power so close, he wasn't sure if he could win this battle. "I'll stop you," Bruce said, his voice low, but steady. "I'll stop you because I believe in something you've forgotten. I believe in the people of Gotham, in their ability to choose." HELA stared at him, her eyes narrowing, as if trying to decipher the riddle in his words. "You think they can save you?" she asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. "You think their hearts will stop me?" "I think their hearts are stronger than anything you can bring," Bruce said, the truth ringing clear in his chest. "Gotham is more than the shadows you want to rule. It's the people. It's their hope, their will to survive. You can't destroy that." For a moment, silence fell between them, thick and suffocating. HELA's gaze never wavered, but something in her expression shifted. It was as though she were seeing him for the first time, not as an enemy, but as something more. "You really believe that, don't you?" she said softly. "You truly believe they'll rise up?" Bruce nodded, the fire in his chest reigniting. "They always do. That's the one thing you can never take from them. Hope." HELA's lips parted as if she wanted to say something, but the words never came. Instead, she took a step back, her form blending into the shadows like she had always been part of them. "This isn't over, Bruce," she whispered. "The game is just beginning." And with that, she was gone. Bruce stood alone in the cave, the silence deafening. His heart pounded in his chest, but for the first time in what felt like forever, it wasn't from fear. It was from something else. Strength. The storm outside still raged, but inside, something had shifted. Bruce knew now that he wasn't just fighting for Gotham. He was fighting for himself, for the hope he had almost forgotten, the hope that had always been there, flickering in the dark. And for the first time, he felt ready to face whatever came next, because in the end, the one thing HELA could never take from him was the one thing he had always had, the belief that even in the darkest of times, hope would always rise again.